Okay. I'll call the meeting to order. First order of business is to approve the agenda of the meeting of May 2nd, 2024 regarding 235 Shore Lane, Town Point subdivision.
Okay, so we're going to be doing the September 16th one. I think that was from a previous meeting. So we're going to be doing.
We're going to approve the agenda first.
Yeah.
Okay, so approving the agenda of the meeting, which has been circulated. And I move to approve the agenda. Do we have a second? Second, Wendy. So that is moved and approved. And the second order of business is to approve the minutes of the May 2nd, 2024 meeting regarding 234 Shore Lane, Town Point. Also circulated with the meeting package. Do I have a second? Second and approved. New business. This is an application for a variance at 860 Captain's Way. The property contains a studio building constructed without a building permit in 2010. The applicant wishes to legalize the structure by applying for a building permit retroactively. In order to qualify for the building permit, the applicant has applied for a variance to reduce the allowable setback from the rear property line from 7.5 meters, which is 24.6 feet, to 1.1 meter, which is 3.6 feet. And the municipality has ascertained that the setback from the sea meets the applicable requirements. An environmental report obtained by the applicant indicates no adverse environmental or neighboring sightline effects from the proposed variance. Letters have been received from 2 neighboring properties, possibly 3. This was revised this morning, but the letters received have all been expressing support for the proposed variance. No letters have been received in response to the request from the municipality expressing objection. A background report was prepared by the applicant explaining complaints expressed by the adjacent neighbor at 856 Captain's Way, and that's included with the meeting brief circulated online. We can invite comments from the public now.
I think we're going to do a presentation of applications by Drew, the staff.
Okay, I didn't catch that. Okay, so next order of business is municipality certification on the application.
Thank you. Okay, so the application for 860 Captain's Way is to request a setback variance in order to legalize an existing studio building, which was constructed without permits in 2010. The requirement under the land use bylaw is a rear setback of 7.5 meters. The specific variance request is to reduce that minimum rear setback from the required 7.5 meters down to 1.1 meters. It's noted that the studio is also within the minimum 30-meter setback from the natural boundary of the sea. However, the applicant's survey report confirms that the average setback from the natural boundary of the sea for the neighboring properties comes to 19.15 meters, which means that the existing 20.8 meter setback for the studio building is allowable under section 3.17.1 of the land use bylaw. The applicant's argument for hardship is explained in the application, which states that in 2010, her husband was diagnosed with leukemia. She then wished to build a small studio/healing center for him, which was constructed in the only level area near the residence that could be constructed quickly without blasting. The application states that no building permit was applied for at the time due to time constraints of the male owner being discharged from the hospital. Notice of the variance application was published in the Undercurrent on September 5th and 12th, posted on the municipal website and mailed to adjacent neighbors. Sorry, skipping through now. 3 letters of support for the variance have been received from the owners of 2 neighboring properties. So one of those properties doubled up with an extra letter, but yeah, so those letters came from 852 and 864 Captain's Way. Otherwise, just quickly show that just second photos here. You can see the studio building and the tram right next to it, and so a photo looking back the rest of the property and see the steepness of the property. Otherwise, I'll just leave the checklist up and leave the decision to the Board of Variance. Thank you.
I'd like to invite comments from the public. Janie, would you like to?
No, Janie's the applicant.
Sorry,
Janie's the applicant, so the public would be.
public first.
From the public.
Okay,
Yeah, the applicant.
okay. From the applicant, comments?
I prepared a little speech. It is repetitive to my submission email wise, as well as what Drew stated in his report, but I'll just quickly read it if I may. Thank you, board members and Drew, for the research, visit to my property, and your time in assessing my Board of Variance application. I hope I was able to explain in my background email as part of my submission how my application came forward, and have provided all the necessary documentation for the board to grant me a minor rear property line setback. I stand before you as a bad seasonal bone citizen who should have understood the bylaws and applied for necessary permits before building a studio. But given the situation of my husband's release from the hospital after leukemia diagnosis and bone marrow transplant, we decided the studio needed to be built very quickly as he required the healing center. If I understand the Board of Variance process to grant a minor variance, there is a set of criteria my application must meet. Firstly, the board has heard the applicant and any person notified under section 541. I'm speaking right now, so you've heard me. Also, as I understand it, there have been 2 letters of support from my immediate neighbors and no negative letters. Point number 2, the board finds undue hardship would be caused to the applicant if the property line setback bylaw is complied with, sorry. My answer is, I hope my application has demonstrated hardship due to the retribution aspect of this application. It will cause significant financial hardship to rebuilding and removing the studio, and of course, emotional hardship, as the studio is a lovely memory of my husband's last years before death. The board is of the opinion that the variance does not do any of the following. Point 1. Result in inappropriate development of the site. I hope the studio is an appropriate development of this site, as it's a mirror image of the original cabin, well built, low profile, and in the style of the neighborhood. Drew is just there, so if required, I'm sure he could comment on that. The former municipal building inspector, Greg Cormier, has signed off that the municipality will issue a building permit should I be granted a setback variance. I have copies of Greg's email here if required. Point 2 and 3, adversely affect the natural environment or affect the use and enjoyment of adjacent lands. Nova Pacific Environmental was retained to assess the natural environment surrounding the studio and concluded the studio has no negative effect on the environment or use and enjoyment of immediate or upland neighbors. A copy of their letter to me is included in the package. Point 4, vary permitted uses and densities under the applicable bylaw. I don't believe, I'm not a bylaw expert, or I don't believe this point is applicable to the studio, as there is no use for the studio except as a studio. And the density bylaws also do not apply, but I may have read that point wrong. I really couldn't understand it. Point 5, defeat the intent of the bylaw. As I understand it, a setback bylaw is to protect surrounding areas and give others space to enjoy their property, and should not disrupt basic harmony in the zone. According to Nova Pacific Environmental, the studio has no negative effects or on any of the view lines of proximity to neighbors, as is cited far below the complaining neighbor. I hope my analysis of my application will also be the board's analysis, and I look forward to a positive outcome. Thank you very much.
What was your comment about retributive aspect? What is that?
The studio was built, I explained it in the email. The studio was built in 2010 before the property owner beside me bought in 2016. With the permission of the existing neighbors. And he's turned out to be not the best of neighbors. And the retribution is he filed a complaint against me not having a permit for his, for my studio or my dock. These were all built long before he even moved in, because he built a dock, a whole private mortgage system within the setback, my setback. And as I'm now a widow, I probably will be selling the property in the next couple of years. I don't know. And I require new clean property lines. So I filed a complaint to the municipality 5 years ago, roughly, about his private mortgage. And it went to the Supreme Court of British Columbia. The municipality took it to the Supreme Court of British Columbia. And the judge ruled that the entire private mortgage has to come down. So he's not happy. So he's lashed out. Did I explain that correctly?
Yeah.
Not that that makes what I did right, you know.
And who built the studio? Who physically built the studio?
One of Max Frost's guys. You know, Max Frost, the builder on the island,
Mhm.
one of his workers.
So it wasn't built by a licensed contractor.
Yeah, well, he would have been a licensed contractor, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know, I didn't ask.
It's one of the guys, but not necessarily the licensed builder himself, building under the license of that operation.
No. No, I hired him.
So
separately.
then a question I would have is, you know, one of the advantages of a licensed contractor is that they have been trained and certified to comply with building codes and all of the, like, for instance, electrical, structural, those kinds of things. Is the studio built on that deck, or is it built on bedrock underneath the studio?
Built on the bedrock.
So the deck's built around it.
Yeah, yeah. I've been working closely with Greg Cormier, I have been over the last couple of years. And,
Working with him, meaning what?
well, just keeping him apprised of all the situation that's been going on with the property. And
Mhm.
he has written a letter to me, before he left, I asked him for this, stating the municipality would give me a permit. If the Board of Variance will grant me the setback. So
That's all
he's done
included.
his due diligence.
That's all included in the package, yeah.
Yeah.
Greg's letter is not included in the package.
It is not included, but the reference to it is.
That's correct, yeah.
Mm. Okay. Well, normally what we do when we go into the discussion mode is discuss all those points you've covered in your presentation. So what I propose what we do now is turn it over to the board for discussion. And maybe instead of painfully going through each one of those points again, maybe we could just note exceptions if we have any.
I can put this on.
Should I stop sharing?
Yeah, sure. I'll put our more, did you have any questions?
No, my only thing that wasn't really clear on this is, have you gone over your floor space ratio, adding this? But that's a moot point, because if Greg Cormier says everything's fine, we just, as long as we approve of it, it doesn't even matter if you've gone over your floor space, right?
Well, yeah, I would have proposed though that we formalize Greg's approval, if that's what it's called. And require that this application, or the approval of the application, be contingent upon compliance with all of the applicable building codes,
Yes,
including floor space ratio.
yeah. So go through all the different things you should have done to get your building permit.
Right.
Go through it
But when you
retroactively.
talk about, are you talking about
The
the,
amount of built space on
On
your
the
entire
property?
property.
no, I'm completely under that,
You're
I know
under,
that.
it looks like it,
Yeah,
looking
oh, yeah.
at your, looking at the aerial photograph, it looks like you're way under.
I am way under, I know that, because that's one of the first questions that I was asked.
Okay,
Um,
so should we go through the application checklist?
what's the application
I've got
checklist?
this, like,
This-
it's on the bill.
Oh, no,
No? Okay.
no. I think I actually questioned the planning department on that, and the response, paraphrasing, was that the municipality takes responsibility for ascertaining that all of the required steps have been complied with.
Yeah.
And they didn't feel it was fair to ask the applicant to go back in and redo the application
Okay,
to check off all those boxes. But I think it's safe to say that Drew and Daniel, you think that the application is complete, in other words?
Sure, yeah,
Yeah,
everything necessary included, yeah.
okay. Yeah, so, we could go through the individual
Here's this.
points. So the variance is minor. Do we agree with that? It's a minor variance?
yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
And do we agree that the neighboring properties have been duly notified and heard by the board?
I agree.
Okay. And hardship has been demonstrated. That hardship has been demonstrated, but it's actually a personal hardship. And it's not a qualifying hardship. Okay, it's partly financial and it's partly personal circumstance. So I'm not going to contest it, but just so you know, it's not really a qualifying hardship.
Yeah.
It's not an external hardship.
It's, yeah, it's a choice you made, nothing.
What would be the,
Oh,
A personal illness is not a qualifying hardship.
yeah,
It's a personal issue and it's unfortunate.
if there was something dangerous on your property or something had to be fixed that was outside of, the, everything, that would be a hardship. Right, okay. Okay,
The prospect of having to remove the improvement or relocate it is certainly a demonstrable hardship, but it also is one that evolved from decisions you made that were personal choices. So by approving this application, the board would not be expressing any kind of support for the decision to go ahead and build without permits. So I think we can agree that the proposed variance doesn't result in inappropriate development on the site.
I agree.
Okay. And the proposed variance doesn't adversely affect the natural environment. That's been confirmed by the environmental report. Agreed?
Agreed.
And it does not affect the development or use of adjacent lands. I believe we can agree on that. And the proposed variance does not represent a variance in permitted uses and densities on the property or adjacent properties. We can agree on that.
It's not.
You said no?
It's confirming it does
Okay,
not,
good.
yeah.
And the proposed variance does not defeat the intent of the bylaw with respect to the property. I believe that's agreed. And the proposed variance does not vary the application of an applicable bylaw in relation to residential rental tenure, as there is no residential rental tenure. And so I think we can move that those 9, as it turns out, conditions have been complied with. And so now therefore be it resolved that, and I've written all these out. I don't think we need to do that in verbally because we just agreed on
Fine.
it.
Yeah, so legalize an existing studio be allowed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the vote is, whereas the proposed variance is minor, and whereas the applicable and applicant and neighboring properties have been duly notified and heard, whereas hardship has been demonstrated, whereas the proposed variance is not result in inappropriate development of the site, whereas the
Actually,
proposed,
sorry, site should be SITE.
where is it not? I spelled it right on my notes.
Public shaming.
Oh,
My kids do that too. You'd think they were looking through a periscope.
Yeah.
And whereas the proposed variance does not adversely affect the natural environment, and whereas the
Sorry,
proposed
can I
variance.
stop you, please?
Hmm?
May I interrupt for a moment? Can we go back to the hardship line? I have a note here saying it's not a qualifying hardship. Is that what you read?
I'm accepting it as a hardship.
Take that out then.
I was just scolding.
fair.
And whereas the proposed variance does not adversely affect the use and development of adjacent lands, and whereas the proposed variance does not represent a variance in permitted uses and densities on the property, and whereas the proposed variance does not defeat the intent of the bylaw with respect to the property, and whereas the proposed variance does not vary the application of an applicable bylaw in relation to residential rental tenure. Now therefore be it resolved that. Do you want to read that out?
Therefore, be it resolved that based on the criteria indicated in section 5421 of the Local Government Act, the Board of Variance application number BOV 20240123, the Chaplin's Way, to reduce the minimum rear setback to legalize an existing studio building be allowed. Do you have any conditions?
The following condition.
The condition is that the municipality verify that the necessary building permit criteria have all been met and complied with. That's repetitive, but anyway. Prior to issuance of a building permit. Yeah, not development permit, building permit, right?
Yeah, it's a building permit.
So I move that that the application be approved on that basis. Second. Moved, second, and approved.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Bye.
Done. Bye. Okay. What happened to the complainant? They didn't.
Do you want to adjourn the meeting and?
Yeah.
Okay, adjourn the meeting. I propose that we
Meeting's adjourned.
Means
meeting's adjourned.
second.
Second. Approved.
Okay, just a sec.